LEGO's quality control is so impressive that out of every 1 million bricks produced, only 18 fail quality control. No matter how you look at it, that's impressive. But most of LEGO's quality control is done regarding the size, shape, and number of bricks, since these are pretty easy to measure and count accurately. What's a bit harder though is to keep track of all the printing. Unlike a brick of the wrong shape or dimension, a misprinted brick can still be used in the build. These little errors have always been viewed as more of a fun novelty rather than a real problem by many fans, with many misprints actually being worth far more than a perfect minifigure or perfect brick. Today we'll be taking a look at some of the rarest, weirdest, and most expensive LEGO misprints. Now, first of all, what exactly qualifies as a misprint? Well, put simply, it's any mistake that LEGO makes in the manufacturing process. That said, not all misprints are the same, and they generally fall into one of two categories: print errors and mold errors. Of these two, mold errors are significantly more rare. Errors in the molding process typically come in two varieties: short shots and long shots. Each of these is the result of an error during the injection stage of production. These are often considered largely worthless, as unlike print errors, these pieces can't generally be used in construction. Short shots occur when LEGO's injection molders don't insert enough plastic to fill the entire mold. The result is an incomplete brick, like this seemingly half-eaten brick. Other short shots can affect hair molds, helmets, or really any other LEGO piece. As you can see from these pictures, these might make for a neat collectible, but many of them are quite useless. Long shots, on the other hand, occur when too much plastic is injected into the mold. This results in a larger than usual brick with some extra plastic sticking off the end. These 1x1 bricks are a perfect example. Overall, these are a lot less common than the short shots, as they're generally a bit easier for LEGO employees to spot while in the factory. There are, however, a few other errors that can happen during the molding stage. Plates can have holes in them, such as this brick right here. The cause of this is most likely debris that was in the mold. One of the most subtle mistakes, though, can be seen here in this piece. Do you see it? Well, it's a small detail, but the LEGO logo on this stud is rotated 90 degrees. This was a common mistake in older LEGO bricks. Printing errors have their own classification system, just like mold errors do. This is largely helpful because all misprints are rare by their very nature, meaning that collectors need some way of distinguishing them. The lowest class of misprints are common printing mistakes. These are often referred to as print variations and include wonky astromech domes, eyes out of line, or prints not fully in line on a helmet. This misprinted R2-D2 looks okay at first glance, but if you take a closer look, it's obvious that the different layers of colors were printed slightly off-center from each other. The next class is what's often considered to be the lowest level of true misprints. These include prints that are shifted in one direction or another, usually to the left or right, like this clone trooper, but they can also seemingly melt down, like this Chewie here. It's not just minifigures either. Even printed plates can get messed up. Just look at this 20th anniversary Darth Vader stand that has been printed 90 degrees off center. This category also includes missing print misprints, where a certain color has been completely left out during printing. Here you can see that this normally tan face is pale white instead. The same thing happened here on this Star Wars figure. It's subtle, but you can see that the head is a bit lighter than the hands. Ones with missing prints are typically worth a little bit less, since it's hard to prove that it hasn't been messed with. Take a look at this creepy eyeless Mickey. This is a genuine misprint, but there's no way to know that they weren't simply removed by a devious fan. Next up are some of the harder to find misprints, which include reverse prints and prints on the wrong color part. Reverse prints, as the name implies, happens when the print is completely applied to the wrong side of a part, like this rare LEGO Trooper or this Rebel pilot. These misprints are worth more just because the error is more extreme, and they don't occur as often. Even more rare is when prints are placed on the wrong color part, like this Black Panther face on a red minifigure head. Now, the last category contains the hardest misprints to find, which includes double prints and combined prints. Double prints occur when a LEGO piece goes through the printer twice. Sometimes the error is overlaid, such as lines on a torso, or sometimes the error lands somewhere else, such as this Darth Vader head. This minifigure is only meant to have printing on one side of its head. Even though they are the rarest, simple double prints like lines on a torso are not necessarily very valuable. A double print head, though, can become more expensive depending on how extreme the misprint is. Are you catching on here? Combined prints are another type of double print, but a lot crazier, because one character's print is placed on top of another character's print. These are incredibly rare and can be worth a hefty price to the right buyer. However, LEGO bricks aren't the only thing that gets printing. Many sets also have stickers to add a final level of detail. However, unlike a single misprinted piece, a mistake on a sticker sheet is usually a much larger problem, as there could have been thousands already sent out before anyone noticed the mistake. The LEGO Creator Harley Fatboy set was notorious for one such error. Here is its sticker sheet. Do you see what's wrong? Well, it seems that LEGO's misspelled Milwaukee for the phrase Milwaukee 8. An easy mistake for sure, but it really should have been caught before release. Another such error can be found in the DeLorean set. Again, LEGO made a small typo. They spelled shield S-H-E-I-L-D. Remember kids, I before E except after C. Of course, you may now be wondering exactly how much some of these misprints are worth, and you may even be searching through your collection for anything that might be less than perfect in hopes that the right collector might pay a hefty price for your brick. Well, it's true that some misprints can fetch a hefty price on the secondary marketplace, but not all of them. So just how much are misprints worth? Well, at the time of writing this video, these short shot controllers are currently selling for $35. You can see that not only are these the wrong shape, they're also missing their print, among them a double error. This off-centered printed Stormtrooper has an asking price of $75. You can see that the print on the helmet seems to be printed in two different layers, with one side being slightly higher than the other. This classic yellow space minifigure has a torso that's been shifted to the side quite a bit. Not only is this rare, but the classic space figures are generally beloved collectibles. The seller is currently trying to get $1,200 for it. But the prices get even higher. Classic Boba Fett minifigures are among the most expensive minifigures out there, and a misprinted one is potentially worth even more. Even this incredibly subtle misprint is enough to drive the price of this figure way up to a whopping $2,500. The line of the helmet is slightly broken and off-center. It's small, but apparently it might be enough. However, at a staggering $5,000, there's this extra derpy Tusken Raider. The face has been shifted slightly downward, but that's about it. That price is probably way too high. I doubt it will ever sell. But lastly, we have the most expensive minifigure that I could find that's currently on sale. This Spider-Gwen minifigure has a torso printed on the wrong color body. These kinds of misprints are incredibly rare, and this is seemingly a one-of-a-kind find. How much will this piece set you back? Well, it'll be yours for the low price of just $10,000. Now, none of these listings mean that people will actually buy these, but they give perspective to show how valuable something can be to the right person, as well as how valuable some people think they are. However, there are a plethora of sold listings that show that there's a strong demand for misprints that are worth hundreds of dollars. Among the motley of manufacturing mistakes made by LEGO, misprinted heads might be the most common. There seems to be something about these pieces that LEGO has difficulty keeping straight. Case in point is this Imperial pilot from the UCS AT-AT set, whose helmet seems to be printed on the side instead of the front. A nearly identical error was spotted by a viewer named Koala Strats, who sent in several images of this trooper who also seems to have a skewed helmet. As I said, this is probably the most common type of misprint, and there's no shortage of examples. There's also this one from user DOG, which I actually think looks really cool. But it's not just Star Wars that sees these mistakes either. Misprinted helmets show up in nearly every LEGO set out there. Coniferous 117 sent in these images of a slightly askew Ninjago hood piece, while user named Xavier found this reverse printed helmet in an Ant-Man set. But this type of error isn't limited to helmets. You see, uniquely molded heads also seem to have a higher than average chance of being misprinted. Just take a look at this Tasmanian Devil from the user Illustrious Drama, or this Wizard Mickey from Immediate_Doctor, both of which have some serious issues with their eye placement. And while we can't be exactly sure what causes the occasional piece to come ajar during printing, I do have a theory. LEGO's printing machines are wonders of modern engineering and automation that use a few clever tricks to keep things consistent. For example, have you ever wondered what these odd dots are on minifigure necks? Well, those are a rather elegant way of making sure that every torso is printed on the correct side. When a torso is placed on the assembly line, a small laser scans the neck, and if there's a dot, recognizes that this is the front side. That's why unprinted torsos don't typically have these marks. In a similar vein, minifigure heads are perfectly cylindrical, so it doesn't matter which side is printed as long as the print lines up on a head. However, helmets and oddly shaped molded heads have no markings to indicate which way is forward. Additionally, Additionally, since the shape of these helmets is so detailed, any misalignment stands out like a sore thumb. These factors have led to significantly higher than average misprint rates on these oddly shaped pieces. But just because something is common doesn't mean that it's worthless. These misprinted helmets can and do sell for surprising amounts. This unique misprinted helmet was sold for $40 on eBay last month, while this perfectly reversed helmet and figure recently sold for a staggering $325. With that in mind, this printed Greedo head from Angel might be worth a fair sum of money. Notice the faint blue line above the eyes, and going a step further, this misprinted Greedo with a much more noticeable printing defect is currently listed for $300 on eBay. That being said, if you've ever come across a rare or interesting LEGO misprint, send me an email with a couple images to videos@spitbrix.com and you might get featured in a future episode. Now, standard minifigure heads also have trouble sometimes. A subtle example came to me from a viewer named Alexander who sent in a few images of a head with a very slight misprint. This minifigure's face was printed just a little bit too low, giving him a massive forehead. A much more pronounced example of the same mistake comes in from Jace, who showed off this horribly aligned Minecraft head. Yikes. However, my favorite misprint has got to be this upside down minifigure head sent in by Mimi. Honestly, I would buy a collectible minifigure just for this piece alone, an upside down happy face. He just looks so happy about the situation that it's hard not to root for this little guy. Now, as funny as these might be, they're all relatively minor compared to just how extreme face misprints can be. One of the best examples is this two-faced head, which was clearly double stamped. What's even more interesting is how the second print is quite smudged, while the original seems perfectly fine. Again, it's impossible to know exactly what happened, but something likely tried to grab this piece while the ink was still wet, or smudged it. Regardless, the owner of the piece is trying to sell it for a whopping $250. Do you think he'll get it? Another funny example comes from Zero Hanu, who sent in this slightly misprinted Thanos head. Here, it seems like the white has been printed in the proper place, but everything else has been shifted downwards. The result makes it look like the Mad Titan has a bit of a milk mustache going on. I guess that explains how he got so big. But sometimes a misprint can actually add a new level of detail that adds to the final look. Just take a look at this Balin skull head, for example. This little scratch under the eye just looks like a scar. Another great example is this submission from Bulkin Smoothie, who received this minifigure in the Galaxy Explorer set. This little spaceman seems to have encountered some trouble on their voyage. What do you think? Is this a giant space spider, or maybe the result of a sci-fi shootout? Who knows? Now, of all the misprinted faces I've ever seen though, the absolute wildest came to me from a viewer named Christoph, who sent in several images of this, let's say, unique head found on an Ahsoka minifigure. Every color on this face is seemingly out of place, making the piece look more like a Picasso painting than an actual minifigure. While putting a price on these sorts of mistakes is difficult, this piece could likely fetch a pretty high price from the right buyer. Earlier though, I did mention that LEGO's machines know which way is front and back on a minifigure torso, and that helps prevent misprints. While that's true, no solution is perfect, and sometimes accidents do happen. One incredibly subtle mistake can be spotted on this Starfire minifigure submitted by Ghostly. While it's a little hard to notice at first, the entire torso is shifted just a millimeter to the side. You can see the difference between the torso and the legs. A far more extreme example though can be found on this Steve Nash minifigure, where the number looks to have been printed twice, though neither one is in the correct spot. Now, moving a bit further down on LEGO minifigures, LEGO legs aren't immune from printing errors either. And as I show you a few, please take 2 seconds to tap that subscribe button below. It's the easiest way to support my channel. Alright, so a viewer named Seb found this minifigure in the London LEGO store. Before you ask, no, the legs aren't supposed to be 2 different colors. This kind of misprint, having the correct print on the wrong color, is one of the rarest out there and would be a great piece in any LEGO collection. A virtually identical mistake can be spotted on this minifigure. This C-3PO minifigure has a red leg. That must have been quite the surprise for the LEGO fan who opened this set. Now, before you start thinking that these kind of mistakes only happen on minifigures, let me just show you this double printed plate from the Darth Vader helmet set. There's also this 1x1 round brick that's meant to be the candle from the Hocus Pocus set. As you can see, the printing is shifted downwards. However, there's one misprint that someone sent to me that I've never seen before. Submitted by a viewer named Khadijah, this tile was printed on the wrong side entirely. While I can't quite tell what the original piece was supposed to be, it looks like it featured a few heads drawn in the LEGO Friends style. If you recognize this piece, let me know in the comments. Misprints like this are incredibly rare, and it's possible that this is the only version of this piece that escaped LEGO's quality control checks in the factory. Does that mean it's valuable? Well, maybe. Minifigure misprints tend to be more valuable than piece misprints, however that didn't stop this LEGO fan from displaying their rare treasure. They built a neat little frame for it. But what about unprinted pieces? Can there be mistakes on these too? Yes, absolutely, just not printing mistakes. Check out this brown arch brick for two separate mistakes. First, there's a hole in one of the studs. While that's annoying, the piece should still work. However, the more obvious mistake up front just might prevent this piece from snapping into anything else. While it looks like this piece may have had something sliced through it, the most likely cause is debris in the injection molding machine, or perhaps a lack of plastic in the mold. If that's the case, this error would be called a short shot. These mistakes are incredibly rare, and finding one in a set is even rarer. These are the kinds of mistakes that LEGO's quality assurance team has a great track record of catching, so this isn't something that most people will ever come across. You won't become rich if you find one of these errors, but consider yourself lucky. An even more extreme example is this piece from Vinyl Empire. Looking at it on its own, it's impossible to tell what this piece is even supposed to be. Thankfully though, this user also sent in this image, showing off exactly what it's supposed to look like as per the instructions. This is most certainly a short shot, which is the result of not enough plastic being shot into the injection molding machine. I've come across a few of these over the years, but I've never seen an example this extreme. What's funny here though is that this piece does seem to still connect with typical studs, so I guess it's not totally useless. Another type of mistake that I hadn't seen before came in from Qureshi, who sent in these pictures of a seriously deformed tile piece. Unlike the other deformed pieces, this one wasn't a result of a faulty mold. Instead, it seems like it was damaged at the later stage of manufacturing. Once all pieces for a single bag are created, they're dumped into a plastic bag in which the top of the bag is sealed by melting and clamping it shut. This orange piece appears to have been caught in that press and got crushed under the pressure and heat. But yet there's another type of LEGO error that can pop up. Manufacturing mishaps aren't limited to bricks. Instructions can also have their own issues. A Reddit user named research_brave posted these images of their instructions for the Spider-Man Final Battle set. As you can see, they look to have been printed at a 90-degree rotation and then stapled on the wrong side. I can imagine that building this set was a tedious and difficult task. This minifigure might have the largest forehead in all of LEGO City. A Reddit user named The Pumpkin Pies posted this image of a LEGO City sheriff whose face is way lower than it should be, which is quite similar actually to this misprint that I stumbled across on eBay. This LEGO Star Wars head is so messed up that it even has printing on its neck. If you ever wanted to make a Megamind minifigure, this could be the perfect piece. Up next is this hilariously creepy skeleton misprint from LEGO Ninjago. Now, this one's a bit different and rarer because, as you can see, the eyes and cheeks are in the right place, but the black parts have been all shifted upwards. LEGO applies each color as a different stamp, so clearly something caused this piece to come loose in between the rounds of color printing. Speaking of creepy though, this entry from Mr. Mer24 shows Beaker from the Muppets with some color missing from their mouth. The result is a very worrying nosebleed. Combined with the Muppet figure's bulging eyes, this guy looks like he might need a doctor. Misprints on oddly shaped molded heads like this are slightly more common than regular heads, and a viewer named Purple Hat Dude sent this example of Stitch from the Disney collectible minifigures line where an entire ear has been left unpainted. Overall, these kinds of misprints with missing colors aren't particularly valuable, but others you'll see in this video certainly are. On the topic of Disney, user JumpyWall posted two images of this wizard Mickey figure who seems to be giving someone a little side eye. I have no idea what's happening just off to the side of the screen here, but whatever it is, it's got his full attention. However, hands down my favorite Disney misprint is this cursed Pinocchio figure. Normally, minifigure heads don't have a front per se, they're just round, but the Pinocchio minifigure brings in the character's most iconic feature, his nose, and it seems like this one missed the mark just a bit. The nose seems to be growing out of the side of his face due to misalignment during the printing process. It's a bit uncomfortable to look at. Just like this chart is. A large percentage of you who watch my videos aren't subscribed, so please take 2 seconds right now to click subscribe if you enjoy my videos. Now, sometimes it's hard to tell if you've got a misprint or if it's actually supposed to look like that. Thankfully, BrickGuy42 sent in a few pictures that perfectly compare the original to the error. This Boba Fett visor appears to have melted downwards. This Minecraft minifigure head has somehow been printed around the corner, which is actually really cool. And this Minecraft head looks like it was drawn from memory by someone who hasn't played the game in a while. While these misprints have mostly been missing colors or unaligned prints, sometimes LEGO sneaks a little something extra onto a piece. This submission by Krabby Cabbage 11 shows a castle archer who seems to have seen too many fights. The extra ink splat over his eye is a perfect battle scar. Likewise, this opera singer could probably use another layer of makeup. However, these LEGO errors aren't confined to just plastic people, because you see LEGO animals are also occasionally sent out into sets looking just a little derpy. Case in point is this from user Guestly Studios that has a few errors. Obviously the face is rotated and dropped, but from the side you can see that there are a few other dots that are out of place. In the same vein, this Reddit user opened a LEGO set and got this one-eyed rabbit. But one of the most common misprints from recent years is from LEGO Minifigures Series 24. In fact, there are multiple people who have posted pictures online of them receiving an extremely droopy-faced koala when opening the conservationist minifigure. Was this a single bad batch, or is there just something about this piece that makes it extremely difficult to print on? If you have this droopy koala, I'd love to see it. In fact, if you have any LEGO misprints in your collection and want to be featured in a future video, please email clear HD images to videos@spitbrix.com. Now, one of my favorite misprints is this submission of a double printed bullet bill. This is actually a rare type of misprint and might be worth some real money to a collector. If you rotate it, Bullet Bill also kind of looks like a sad one-armed monster. But what might be the most commonly misprinted minifigure that I could find though has got to be Chewbacca from LEGO Star Wars. And what's weirder is that they all seem to have the same mistake. This one from Kieran, this one from Panda 3D Craft, and this one from an anonymous user all have the face printed on the back. Again, there seems to be something about this element that LEGO has a hard time keeping straight. But it's not just Chewie. I also found a similar mistake on this popcorn guy. Another piece with surprisingly common misprints is R2-D2. Now, there have been several versions of this legendary droid, but many of them seem to have the same error pointed out by both Snipe Toes and Ma1. Both have the same wonky angle on the head dome. However, this user had a different problem with their piece. As you can see when compared to the instructions, the body here seems to be missing a level or two of ink. But it's not really just minifigures that can be misprinted, because any piece or tile with a print on it can turn into a mistake. Just look at this Darth Vader stand that has clearly been printed upside down. Lil Jamzo points out a similar issue with their version of the Starry Night display tile. Though, if I'm being honest, I actually really like the way that the studs are painted here. It makes the LEGO piece just a bit more like the actual build. Although that's a pretty subtle mistake that could be easily overlooked, sometimes a LEGO misprint actually ruins the entire build. That's the case with the build of the Guardian ship from Guardians of the Galaxy from Reddit user Casual Nuke. The print on the cockpit is skewed so far to the side that it doesn't even resemble a cockpit really anymore. Luckily, LEGO is incredibly good at replacing these kinds of pieces, since for the most part they're rare occurrences. A less dramatic misprint can be found on this submission from user Mr. Jaybird. It seems that the Lion Knights got a little sloppy on their craftsmanship and missed a half layer of paint on this shield. It's honestly a pretty cool effect, but I can't help but feel like I'd get a little upset to get something like this in a set of this size. Speaking of large sets, the Titanic is one of the single largest sets ever released with nearly 10,000 pieces. With that much going on, the odds of getting a misprinted piece are higher than average, and that's exactly what happened to Skull Rogue, who was unlucky to get this misprinted piece. It looks like this ship now has a new name, the Titanic. But you see, this isn't the only spelling mistake found in one of these sets though. Humbles19 sent in this image of their build. The nameplate here is the very last step of the entire build, so this wouldn't be noticed until spending dozens of hours working, and it had to have been really disappointing to find this. Although you might say that the ink was running low when printing the letter C, technically speaking this might not be a misprint after all, but rather a packaging error, since this colon tile does in fact appear in the LEGO typewriter set. My prediction is that the wrong printed tile was included in this Titanic set. On the topic of packaging though, it seems that LEGO boxes are also not immune from misprints. Can you spot the printing error on this box on the right side? Well, this box on the right shows the minifigures with purple accents. However, the ones in the set are obviously blue. It appears that LEGO's box printer was miscalibrated or running low on ink. Sadly, this user didn't buy the set to see if the minifigures inside matched the mistake, but it's pretty safe to assume that they didn't. As mentioned earlier, helmets are a particularly common source of misprints, and the misalignment on this Captain America minifigure is quite annoying. But it pairs perfectly with this skewed Whiplash minifigure from Michelle Pard. It has printing on the back of its helmet. In fact, Megatronic 2004 also had a misprint on this same piece, just it's slightly different. Here, the entire print has been placed on the side of the helmet. Which of these two Whiplash misprints is worse? Let me know in the comments. Now, this one isn't technically a misprint as there's no printing on it, but it's definitely a manufacturing mistake worth pointing out. This picture shows what's known as a short shot. That's the name for this pretty rare mistake where not enough plastic gets injected into the mold. The vast majority of these get spotted pretty easily by LEGO's quality assurance team, so these are truly rare finds in LEGO sets. Now, of course, LEGO Star Wars Troopers are some of the most varied minifigures, coming in with more than 50 unique versions. With that much variety, it's only natural that some mistakes get made. This completely unprinted Trooper helmet is quite a rare mistake, but one that's practically worthless, honestly. Either way, I like it. Meanwhile, this submission from Creeper Star 83 seems unprinted at first until you turn the minifigure around. These kinds of reversed prints are pretty common with Trooper helmets, as we can see another version of the same mistake in these pictures from Fit Nectarine. If you found this video interesting, I think you'll also really enjoy this video where I talk about 10 hidden secrets in LEGO sets. Click to watch and subscribe for more LEGO videos.